All right, guys, it is camp week for the Dogs. Palmer been flexing. He's been stretching, doing his calisthenics, getting ready for camp week. We'll hear from Kirby Smart on August 2nd. That is Wednesday, if my calendar is on the right year. It is. Palmer, what are you looking forward to hearing, man? We just heard from Kirby at SEC Media Days, but as I've alluded to, when Kirby gets that visor on and y'all hear from him after practice, he's a different dude than when he's up there spitting wise words from behind the podium at SEC Media Days.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So Wednesday's interview session with him will be before the first practice. Then we'll talk to players Thursday after that first practice with what we've been told, a brief viewing period on Thursday. So should be a lot of content to come out of that. Do I think – I don't know how different the message will be on Wednesday from what it was at SEC Media Days, 2 weeks ago. It'll be 2 weeks and 1 day from the time that Kirby talked in Nashville. Because in terms of injuries, I mean, that's going to be the same thing. You're not going to have quarterback worked out. We didn't really discuss wide receivers with him or discuss, defensive line, the secondary. I think a lot of those things will, we'll see how it plays out during camp, some of those position battles. But I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you could go with headlines and storylines. Jake and I are planning to have you all covered this week with storylines for fall camp. And I think that there's a lot of different ways that this stuff could go. And, I think certainly there is an excitement in the air that football will be back.
I'm excited to have Kirby actually have to talk about the quarterbacks. I think he kind of sidestepped it at SEC Media Days. We didn't really hear much about Carson Beck or Brock Vandagriff or Gunnar Stockton come out of Nashville. And I think at this point, it's probably going to dominate the storylines, I would imagine, whether Kirby actually gives a starting QB or not. I have to imagine this is going to be something he'll get multiple questions about from different angles as people try to peel back the layer of that onion.
Yeah, I mean, over the course of the next month, they are going to have to decide on a starting quarterback if they haven't already decided that. Like you said, whether he comes out and publicly says that or not, I'm not certain. What I do think is if they've made that decision and that is something that is known within the team, it's probably something that he will – and I'm not expecting that decision to have been made now, maybe a couple weeks into camp or, by the time the UT Martin week rolls around. If that's, at the point that is a decision that's made within this team, I think that he's probably going to want to put that fire out, as opposed to having to answer that question every day, in lead up to that game.
Yeah, I think that it's one of those things that, I don't know. He's not going to do it. I mean, he's just going to put or next to it every week, and that's just how this will be for the rest of time with anything that he does. But, yeah, I don't know. I think that he'll talk about that. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see how they address, replacing a lot of key elements. And really, too, what's interesting is, they're not going to think about it at this point. Obviously, they're going to try to move forward from here. But, Georgia – could lose a lot after this year. That's possible. And so the face of the program could change pretty drastically. I don't know that that's something that we'll get to in preseason camp, but I think it's a storyline that is of interest to me throughout the season in terms of, depth, experience, guys who've been around, guys who've been with this program through 2 national championships and pushing for a third. How does that affect things? How do you kind of build for the future knowing that that's the case? And I think that the important piece is to reinforce that championship culture and bring these new guys in the same way.
Well, and along those lines, I do think that we might start to hear some buzz about some of those younger guys, especially the ones that were enrolled early, which is the majority of this class. But those ones that were enrolled early and, getting their feet wet, during bowl prep, during spring practice. Those guys, I do think that we will start to hear some positive stuff about, certain ones. And, that gives you an idea, like you said, Roos, that Georgia is likely to lose a lot of players from this team. Obviously you've got a full football season to play before then, but likely to lose a lot of guys. And some of those younger guys, whether they're second year guys that didn't play a ton last year, somebody that would come to mind there would be like a Darius Smith or a CJ Smith at wide receiver. You've got some youngsters in there, Raylan Wilson, CJ Allen. Those guys are going to be counted on to step into, bigger roles. And so I think that we will start to hear some noise about some of those guys and how they're coming along. Both the true freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores, those underclassmen. I think that's where we might get some headlines.
I'm ready for Darius Smith hype, dude. I've been on the Darius Smith train for a long time. I'm ready for the breakout for Darius Smith. I think he's an elite athlete, and I'm just waiting for him to put it all together. I hope this is the year.
Darius Smith and Tyler Williams are on the all Roos team.
No question.
I'm most interested to hear about the quarterbacks. Like I mentioned, I want to hear what Kirby has to say about the transfer wide receivers, Lovett and Ra Thomas. From what the players are indicating, Lovett is ready to go. He's ready to play. He's ready to dominate. And when I spoke to him, he's ready to do those things too. He has lightning in a bottle right now, and I can't wait to hear what Kirby says about him. But you also have the players that you kind of take for granted because you know what they can do because they've done it the past couple seasons in Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers. And, how do they get any better? How do they improve? How can they get better aside from, McConkey's rough stretch where he had some drops against Kent State and Missouri, I believe. That guy's rock solid, and so is Brock Bowers. And then on the defensive side of the ball, how do you replace Jalen Carter? You can't do it with one person, but how's Georgia going to approach that? How much depth do they have at D-line? And how encouraged is Kirby with what he's seeing from all those guys who are going to attack it by committee? I think we've spoken before about how Nazir Stackhouse can kind of be the spearhead of that group, but obviously you're looking at wave after wave after wave of player and group on that defensive line core. So excited to hear that. And I don't know how much we'll actually hear from Kirby as he gets camp started, because I don't know how much he's actually seen. But as things unfold over the next couple weeks, we'll have you covered, of course, here at Dogs HQ.